I want to thank you for joining me today for my webinar where we're going to learn a super simple fundamental way to relieve most of your aches and pains and my favorite herb to help that stick. This is going to be a super simple practice that you can use right away. It's also going to be a demo of how working with me online works. And at the end, I'll be sharing ways that you can work with me further. I'm Paula, and I'll get to more introductions in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about this tea portion today. I've brought some of my herbal teas with me today. I bet a lot of you have a box that looks similar. It's a collection of things that you've picked up here and there at various times. The herb that we're going to be talking about today is almost certainly something that you have in here. Today's herb is chamomile. Now, you might have straight chamomile tea. You also might have chamomile in blends. There's lots of nighttime blends that have chamomile in the ingredients. Other blends that have chamomile might be anxiety blends or teas that help improve your mood or even reduce stress and relax muscle, because chamomile is helpful in all of these situations. It's also particularly great for what we're going to be talking about today, but I'll tell you all about that in a moment. First, let's talk about making an herbal tea. Step one is you need a mug, or in my case, a jar of hot water. If you have a saucer or a lid of some type, that would be really helpful as well. And you also need your tea. Step two is to combine. So we open up your tea, and we drop it in the water. Now you might have loose chamomile tea as well. This is a bag of whole chamomile flowers that I use with one of my herb classes. If you have the option to get a hold of any fresh chamomile, this is fresh chamomile that I picked last summer and froze, and it makes a totally different beverage. It's so delightful than what the dried stuff was. But whether you've got fresh, whether you've got dried, whether you've got in a blend, however you've got your chamomile, drop it in a jar or a mug, give it a cover if you can, and set it aside. Now, like I said, I'm Paula. I am a reformer Pilates teacher and an herbalist. So I call myself a wellness coach. I'm based in the northern and western suburbs of Philadelphia. My reformer Pilates business is in North Wales, PA, and as an herbal wellness coach, I teach in-person and online herbal wellness workshops. I've been doing both for between 10 and 15 years now. So what I'm going to be teaching you today is just really a tiny bit of the fundamentals that I think we all need as we're walking through this world. This is some of the information that I wish everybody had before they came to see me, or really before they started any new practice. So if you are already not familiar with me, then welcome, and I'm glad you're joining me today because that shows that you have a good curious spirit, and I really think that we need curiosity as we're trying to reach our goals, whether they're wellness or all the rest of them. We're going to learn today how movement and the plants can help you feel better. More than that, how they can actually improve each other's results exponentially. The movement piece we're going to learn isn't a replacement for your current exercising and stretching, nor is the chamomile going to be a replacement for eating a good diet and getting good sleep. But when we work with them together, we can get even better results than we would using them separately. These movement and herbal practices are meant to underpin and to shore up your wellness foundations as you build out your fundamental strength and healing. Now, let me put this down, and I'd like to introduce you to my skeleton crew of assistants that I have today. I'd like you to meet Slim. This is my friend Slim, and he's going to help us out today as we go through our movement piece. The first thing, whoops, make sure that Slim's on there all right. I don't want to be dropping off. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the equipment that you're going to need. So you're going to need a chair, a nice hard seat chair, especially one that's flat and even as compared to one that's contoured. And you're either going to need a rolled up towel or a half of a foam roller, a half dome. Both are going to, either are going to be helpful for you. Let's go back to that tea for just a second. We've had a couple of minutes now with the chamomile in the hot water. And what I'd like you to do is take the cover off if you've got one on and just take a sniff. Now, first, there's the actual smell. What does that smell like to you? And then there's your reaction to the smell. This could be anything from your shoulders relaxing, to your scalp prickling, to your tummy rumbling, to your heart rate changing, to really anything. So what do you feel when you smell the scent of chamomile steam? Yummy. Now, what you're going to do first is take just a tiny sip and hold that in your mouth. Don't swallow it yet. Hold that tiny little sip of chamomile and think about what it feels like to you. You're looking to see if it feels rich, lush, or if it's kind of drying and astringent. And if you don't quite understand what that might feel like, imagine what it would feel like if you had cream in your mouth, or what it would feel like if you had lemon water in your mouth. And with those two extremes in your mind, where do you think that your chamomile tea sits on those two spectrums? Between rich and drying, between sweet and bitter, how does it feel to you? Does it cause you to salivate? Does it cause something in your belly to rumble? Anything happening in your body is perfectly fine. There's no right answer here. There's just what you're feeling. Okay, we're going to take a larger, more normal sip, maybe a swig, and swallow that one. And again, look at what you feel. Does anything happen in your sinuses? Does anything happen in your gut? Does anything happen in your lungs or in your back muscles or in your neck muscles? Again, no right answer. There's just what you feel. Now, if you've got a cover, we're going to cover your tea again and set it aside. It needs to sit for a while. So we've got our tea brewing, we've got our chair and our towel. So what we're going to do is come to the front edge of your chair and we'll sit on your towel or your half dome foam roller. Most of the time when we sit on chairs, we sit a little bit scooched forward and leaned back against the back of the seat. It's pretty comfortable this way, but it's not a really healthy position for our hips, for our tailbone, for our spine. But then when we sit up, because our hip flexors aren't used to doing this, it's really hard to come into a neutral position. So we tend to still be a little bit hinged back. So we lift the chest artificially and fake posture. I've promised to show you a super simple move to help you get rid of your aches and pains. And part of that move is going to be involving your towel here. Now, one of my favorite lines in Pilates is that the only four-letter word that I don't allow is EASY. Things can seem to be very simple. They're usually not, but they're not going to be easy. So to keep this simple, I want you to really take your time and try to feel the positions that I'm describing. This is really more about finding a position that uses movements to get there and then being able to hold that position. The position that I'm talking about today is called neutral. And even if you're familiar with the idea of a neutral spine, stick with me here. There's different ways to cue this and explain this that I think are going to come in really handy. Now, the reason that we're sitting on the towel or the half of a foam roller, if you have one of those, is because it elevates the hips very slightly compared to the knees. And that gives us more give through the hips as we start to figure this out. I'm going to point out Slim here again to you. I'd like you to notice that his spine is curved. It goes in at the low back and it comes out at the upper back. That's important because your spine is curved too. It goes in at the neck, out towards the back at the rib cage, in at the low back, and again out at the tailbone. This is the natural shape of your spine, and it's the shape that you're built to maintain. The thing is, our human spines, they flex and they extend, and the hips and the pelvis move, the rib cage moves, the head moves around on the neck. There's lots of positions that we can have. This is called ROM, or range of motion. The key here is to learn what a neutral position actually feels like and to try to keep that neutral position, to live in that position as much as possible so that from neutral we do all of our other motions through the day. There is quite a bit of research out there on PubMed that shows that a neutral spine position is strongly correlated with reducing things like lower back pain and preventing things like lower back pain. If you're not familiar, PubMed is a website that lets you search for research articles and research publications, and at the very least to get the abstracts and the conclusions from them. Sometimes you don't get the whole study, but you can still get a lot of really good information. And this right here, this neutral position that we're going to be talking about, is the whole point. All we're trying to do here is to realign the pelvis so that we hold the spine in neutral. This has implications, though, for how everything else in your body lines up and actually works. That's a big deal. Think about your hips. You've got the psoas muscles, you've got the SI joints, things like bursitis happen. Or even think about your neck and your head. Think about TMJ and tension headaches. Even your vision is controlled by muscles. So think about it this way. If your car tires are out of alignment, then that means that all of the wear on the rest of the car parts that make it move is going to be extreme. And you really need to get that misalignment of your tires fixed, or you frankly risk your safety every time you go out on the road. And in the same way, you want to get your whole body aligned as well, or you risk a lot of parts of your health falling apart that are interconnected. It might not seem like a neutral pelvis has anything to do with your TMJ pain or with your digestive issues, maybe reflux or constipation, but I'm telling you, they are, and we'll show you how that happens in just a mo. Now, if you're not on your chair yet, it's time. We're going to take your towel or your half dome, and we're going to sit right on the edge. Now, like I said before, this is all about getting your hips slightly higher than your knees so that we've got a little bit more give through those hips. I want you to imagine that you've got laser pointers attached to your pinky toes, and they point straight across the room, parallel to each other. Most people's feet turn out a bit, which is a whole separate problem when you think about that car alignment idea. So let's kick your heels out just a little bit so that your feet are parallel to each other according to the outsides of your feet, and that those laser pointers on your pinky toes are pointing straight across the room. Try to use your mind's eye to actually feel where this is. You can also now take the heels of the hands onto the hip points and point straight across the room as well. For now, I want you to just relax your belly. No pulling it in, no sucking it in, no pushing it out, just relaxed. And I want you to press into your hips to find your hip points. Let me show you what that looks like on Slim. Here we have the two hip points where if you were to lay on the floor, these are the points of the hips that would be resting right on the floor. So you're trying to find those with the heels of your hands, and I want you to draw a line from those hip points straight over your kneecaps and down to the fronts of your ankles. The feet aren't too wide or too close together. They're right in line with the knees and the hip points, and they're all nice and parallel to each other. Now that we've got the feet set up, having showed you Slim's hip points, the hips themselves form a circle as well. You can see that right on the inside of his pelvis. At the bottom of the circle is what's called the pubic symphysis. This is where the two halves of the pelvis come together and join with a piece of cartilage. So what we're going to do is try to find your pubic symphysis. But you don't want to press in too hard because that could be very painful. We take the heels of the hands onto those hip points again and fingers down in front, trying to find the bone at the base of your pelvis. Depending, you might have the heels of your hands still on the hip points. You might do thumbs on the hip points, or you might be able to use your wrist or your forearms on the hip points. Whatever you can do to find those 3 points of a triangle, 2 hip points and the pubic symphysis down front in the middle. Now the key is to get these 3 points to that triangle, hip, hip, and pelvis, perpendicular to the floor, straight up and down, 90 degrees. So this is where the towel comes in. Let yourself rock back and forth. Notice how the triangle points shift, how you can have the hips behind the pelvis, or how the hips can be in front of the pelvis. We are looking to find them perfectly vertical. Try this standing up as well. I can guarantee it's going to feel pretty strange because most people walk around with a pelvic tilt. Either their tailbone is tucked under too far or it's tucked back too far. So coming into an actual neutral, an actual perpendicular pelvis is going to feel strange. However, a pelvic tilt feeds into all sorts of problems, all the way up and down the body. And this, my friends, is the neutral pelvis, and by extension, a neutral spine at the low back. The practice here is learning to maintain this. So you might ask, why? Who cares? Well, look at it this way. First, imagine everything that's in there, right? So you've got the hip points, you've got the pelvis. Imagine everything that's under your hands. As far as soft tissue goes, we have elimination organs. We've got the intestines, the kidneys, the bladder. There's reproductive organs in there as well. And there is a huge, a gigantic amount of blood vessels. We have the ascending aorta that comes all the way down the torso. It's a massive blood vessel, and it splits into the femoral arteries that have to go through this hip crease that we've got here. And there's also a correspondingly immense amount of lymph channels that are draining all of these organs, that are supporting all of this circulation. Your sciatic nerves come through the torso and down the legs. The psoas muscles, they're one of my favorites, but they are a major puller on the pelvis, which causes the tilting when the psoas muscles are tight. And a lot of people have tight psoas muscles, which means that a lot of people have that pelvic tilt and they don't even feel it. They don't even know it's there because they're so used to it. Now, more superficially, the muscles of the abdomen, including that top set of muscles, the six-pack, right? Well, the six-pack is called that because it has 2 sets of 3 muscle bumps on either side of a middle piece of connective tissue. that connective tissue can separate with continued pressure from a pelvic tilt. This is a condition called diastasis recti. It's very common in pregnancy, but it can happen to anybody at any stage given pressures from a pelvic tilt that this piece of connective tissue just can't handle anymore. So hopefully you're starting to see why something this relatively simple, but not necessarily easy, is really key to solving so many of the aches and the pains that we develop as we go along through our lives. I really call these our living pains. They're the things that accumulate over the course of our lives that we've had to adjust and adapt to. Living pains might be things like old injuries that we're still carrying the movement patterns of. It might be habits like how we carry bags or how we carry children. And it's even stuff like the repetitive ways that we get in and out of cars, or how we stand at the kitchen counter when we're there for a long time. The habits that we've created and that we've adapted to can really all add up to less than ideal postural changes that our bodies use. These used to be coping mechanisms or necessary adjustments that we had to make, but now that that problem is over and done with, they're just bad habits. And in truth, overcoming these postural changes, these living pains, is the big work of alignment. Now, the neutral pelvis is just the first half of the magic that can relieve your aches and pains. The other half of the magic is the top half. The rib cage and your neck placement can also be out of alignment and brought back into neutral. Again, consider the contents, this time of, for example, your rib cage. All of the digestive organs that are tucked inside of your rib cage, including the stomach, the liver, the gallbladder, your esophagus comes up through here, you've got your pancreas and your spleen tucked in there, all of the digestive organs that happen to be right up inside your ribs. You've also got your lungs and your heart, and by extension, the beginnings of your circulatory system all coming right out. There are enormous amounts of lymph channels coming through your torso, out of your arms and your neck. You've also got the shoulders, the shoulder blades, the rotator cuff muscles, the neck muscles. And we also have the juncture between the upper spine and the lower spine. Right at T12, the lowest rib cage vertebrae, and L1, the top of your low back curve, right in here. When your rib cage is lifted forward and your pelvis is tilted back, which a lot of people's are, we have a lot of shearing forces that are happening at that juncture, right at your spine. This creates a lot of pain and problems. So aligning all of your bony markers, the hips, the rib cage, the neck, lets all of your soft tissue align as well. So that in addition to the physical alignment, all of the liquid and gaseous work that your body does, like respiration, circulation, digestion, everything can flow the way that it's designed. So sitting and standing and moving from a neutral position not only helps relieve stress and strain on your skeleton and on your muscles, but it also allows your whole body to function better as well. But we're not going to be learning the rib cage and the neck alignment today. I will tell you how you can learn those two pieces for free in just a minute. One of the questions that I've gotten is, does this mean we need to sit on a towel all the time? And the short answer to that is sure. Until your hips and your pelvis are strong enough and flexible enough to be able to sit in a neutral position, the towel is going to be a great assist to keep you there as compared to the normal sling back. Now, there's one piece left, and that is to tell you about why the chamomile is so helpful. It's been sitting and steeping for a while. It's gotten quite a bit darker. Chamomile has some really helpful actions. It's antispasmodic, which means that it helps relax tense muscles. And chamomile is particularly helpful in the abdomen. So whether you're talking about menstrual cramps or digestion-related cramps that might be food sensitivities or overeating tension, or even stress, because some people carry their stress in their abdomens, in their stomachs, in their gut. Chamomile can help relieve that type of tension, particularly in the abdomen. Now, you've probably noticed from the smell that chamomile is also sweet. Now, in herbalism, that really means that it's nourishing. Chamomile helps support the functions of things like digestion, of even things like hormone production and hormone destruction, because the liver needs to go through that detox work as well. So that chamomile helps liver detox, but not in a stimulating way. It's more of a nourishing, building sort of way. Another thing chamomile does, have you ever experienced being too tired to go to sleep? It actually is a thing. It takes some energy to reorganize our bodies so that things can shut down for the night that don't need to be up and running. And it actually is possible to be so tired, to be so fatigued that you can't do those processes. You can't make those shifts happen to be able to go to sleep. So chamomile can help you get over that hump and get into that actual sleep state. Chamomile also helps sleep because it does relieve stress. It is a relaxing, calming, happy kind of herb. It's also really helpful with that almost toddler-like petulant attitude when we're talking about sleep, that attitude where you just don't want to go to bed yet. You know you need to, but you don't want to. Chamomile can help really rein that in, which I find to be pretty useful. And then finally, when chamomile is steeped for a long time, it gets darker. It gets full and rich and bitter tasting. And now it's also become a digestive remedy as well. Bitter tastes trigger bitter taste receptors all over your body. In the digestive system, these bitter taste receptors trigger systems like the digestive juices and the peristalsis in the actual intestines. Those are the movements that cause what you're digesting to be moved along, stimulated by bitter tastes. Bitter tastes also stimulate you to salivate. There's enzymes in your saliva that are helping to break down food. Bitter also relaxes the muscle in your intestines, as does the actual chamomile itself. Bitter tastes cool inflammation, and they help to get the liver moving so that it can process all of that food that we've been digesting. There's all kinds of mechanics and chemistry happening in your digestive tract. And the bitter tastes help stimulate all of that. This, by the way, is a major reason that bitter coffee helps keep you regular. Bitters are really useful. So here we have a simple chamomile tea with all of these benefits, from stress relief to muscle relaxation to digestive support. That's why chamomile is my favorite herb to get these small changes that we've been making with that neutral pelvis discussion to stick. Now, drinking chamomile is not going to help if your body is so kinked and strained from your skeletal positions. If that psoas is so tight, it doesn't matter if the chamomile is there, it's not going to be able to release it, at least not for long. And realigning your hips and your pelvis isn't going to last very long if your torso muscles are very tense and your abdomen is inflamed from a poor digestive system, and if you're not breathing fully into your lungs and helping to normalize all of the pressure in your torso. So just the chamomile and just the neutral pelvis by themselves, not going to fix everything. But when we work with the body and the herbs together, they really complement each other. And they also collaborate with each other so that the easing that happens from the chamomile can let the pelvis get into a position and stay there a little bit longer. So it supports your health and your wellness in an actually fully holistic way. Inner medicine, outer medicine, inner strength, outer strength, inner alignment, and outer alignment. So if you want to learn how to realign your rib cage and your neck to go along with the pelvis, here's how you can do that for free with me. Visit my website, paulasherbals.com. You go to the top bar and you'll see a link for free resources. This will take you to my free resources hub. Yes, it is a membership page. It's a free membership page. And behind that login is all my resources, things about the specific herbs. You'll find a write-up in there about chamomile, things about gardening and about making remedies, how to make an herbal tea, all sorts of info and tips and guides, and all of my Pilates and stretching videos that I've made. In the collection of videos, under the heading called Move, you're going to see one called 2 Tech Neck Stretches. These are 2 stretches that are going to help align your neck so that your ears come back over top of your shoulders where they belong. And you're also going to see Align Your Rib Cage, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is where you're going to learn how to get your ribs over your hips, which might feel like you're slumping, but you're not, I promise. Part 2 is about aligning your rib cage when you're lying down, which is super helpful if that's something you struggle with. Part 1 is the way to bring the pelvis work today into the rib cage and the neck work that's available. Now, you'll also have access to a free bonus. I have made a fun sheet that you can download of my exclusive deluxe stick figures of demonstration. I'm not very good at art, but I am all right at stick figures. So this is a visual reminder of how to find your neutral pelvis and how to practice that as well. Now, if you would like to learn more about how to take these small, fundamental practices and expand them to address many of your problems, from your feet to your forehead, everything from foot stretches to alignment work to hip strengthening to shoulder blade function, all kinds of good stuff. If you'd like to learn how to do more of that and do it better, plus learn systemic internal healing techniques as well using medicinal herbs, and get a bunch more bonuses like additional stick figure fun sheets, then I invite you to take a look at my Foot to Forehead Fix program. Again, paulasherbals.com. This is an online program that's 8 weeks long that takes you through private sessions with me and also small group training sessions with the rest of your classmates, so that you can learn all of these fundamentals on the inside and on the outside to set yourself up for a good foundation. Whether you are the type of exerciser who is old hat at all the things, weekend warrior, everything from step aerobics to trail running, you've got it down. Or you're the type of exerciser who's never actually exercised before. None of us been taught from the beginning how to have good alignment, good foundations, setting up good movement patterns to feed into whatever we're going to do. The Foot to Forehead Fix program is designed to do just that. In 8 weeks, it gives you enough foundational information to be able to move more effectively, more efficiently, with more ease and with more comfort through the world. So thank you for joining me today to learn about our neutral pelvis, the benefits of some chamomile tea, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and that it's quite a lot more comfortable now that you've relieved the stress and the strain on your pelvis and gotten rid of all the aches and pains that are associated with that. Thanks again, and I hope to see you inside the Foot to Forehead Fix program soon.